I am going to share with you who I predict is going to win the presidency here in 2020, here in the United States. Ultimately, this is my answer, but still, I have a prediction, and I definitely solidly believe that Donald Trump will be reelected, and I think there's a chance it may even be close to a landslide. And here's why I feel this way. To be clear, I'm not a political person. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm out of this whole contest. Will I be voting? Yes. But as far as me having allegiance to a political party, no. And I think that's what makes my viewpoint very relevant, because I'm not tied up into the mentality of just one tribe or the other. Ultimately, I think Trump will be reelected despite all that's happened with COVID, despite all that's happened with Black Lives Matter. I think and I've mentioned this before in other videos, so many topics become automatically a political issue. And when that happens, it sort of sets the pace for this. So when we look at Black Lives Matter, granted, absolutely some changes need to be made, undeniably. But often when you see things happen on the Democratic side, there's not a clear explanation on what the call to action is. So that sends a message to the other side, the conservatives, that, okay, so they don't want us to have police anymore. Like, it goes from one extreme to the other because we don't have a clear vision of what we're trying to do with this. And COVID is the same way. COVID, well, okay, so the government is going to make me wear a mask. They're taking my rights away. When there's already been a history of back and forth on each political side on COVID to begin with. I think, and this is my opinion, and I'm not saying this is how I personally feel, I'm predicting how America collectively will feel and how they're going to vote. I think in some ways, out of rebellion, people are going to vote for Trump. That's what I think. I think because, again, there's been unclear communication on what exactly the call to action was, especially for individual people about Black Lives Matter. And again, because there's been so much confusion about COVID and masks. And when it even seems like, well, is this just a political thing? Like, is this a thing to keep Trump from being elected? No, there's a good chance. No. But it's those little ideas in our minds that think, well, why not just stick with Trump? Because ultimately, I don't know what the Democrats are trying to do, but it doesn't seem as stable as what we already have, even if what we have is not that stable. Not to mention, it sounded like I said dimension just then, and that's where I'm going with this conversation. We have a matter of, it appears, two older men running for president, both of whom have sort of lost their minds. It'd be one thing if we had a candidate, if there was a candidate other than Joe Biden running for the Democratic side. But the general perception of him is that ultimately, it's like he has Alzheimer's. He has some kind of situation where he's lost his cognitive ability to think and answer questions. That's the perception. It's hard to change that perception at this point. If there were a different candidate, it'd be different. But you could go, oh, well, Trump's lost his mind too. I don't know that he's lost his mind. I think he completely controls his mind. He just lives in a different existence than the rest of us. One that seems a bit cartoonish and like a villain in a kid's cartoon show or whatever it is. But ultimately, those are the two options. There's been a lot of confusion. And I think, ultimately, this is all going to subconsciously cause the people who are in the middle, who would ultimately be referring to themselves as independents or libertarians, I think collectively, those people are the ones who largely determine who actually gets elected in those swing states. I think that's where we're at. I think as far as an act of rebellion, and then largely that's probably what got Trump elected to begin with. Those are my thoughts. I'm not saying that I agree with it either way. I'm saying that's what I think is going to happen. And we'll know in a couple of months. COVID related to the election, not trying to keep Trump from being elected. Could it be one big conspiracy? Ultimately, I think it could have a reaction where even if that's the perception, people feel that in some way Trump is safer. Keep in mind, I'm not a political person. That's only what I predict is going to happen, being an outsider. Your comments right here.